Every year at this time, people ask me to send them free copies of the jazz music. And the answer is always no. And if we're trying to get music for free, on the surface, it seems like it's not hurting anybody. And in fact, I've heard people say the big corporations, this is just like no big deal to them, right? Except that it has been. A lot of those corporations have now been, um, you know, almost obliterated. And people will say, well, that's fine because they're the evil corporations. But the truth is, whatever you do to hurt those big guys is even worse on us little guys. So talking about the jazz music for the state of Texas, audition music. So yes, I write every year. I write 3 etudes for those auditions. They don't always take all mine, but this year they did, and last year they did. They took all 3 of my etudes. The sales of that music, if I'm not mistaken, goes towards scholarship money. If you say, "Oh, I want that music for free," that money's not going someplace else now. The way it's supposed to work is your band director buys that music and then gives it to the students. And the profit's supposed to go towards scholarships or other programs like that. If it's just out there for free, then those scholarships go away. And that's just a microcosm of how it is in the real world for all of us that are writing music. I wrote my first book in 1990. 3 months later, one of my students comes back and hands me copies of my book. He had gone to some band camp. Someone got their hands on the book, run off a bunch of copies, and distributed it to the kids. And you know what was hard about that for me is in 1990, my entire income, and we're talking about me and my ex-wife, our combined income in 1990 was like $7,000. Way, 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 way below the poverty line. And people are giving my books away for free. There's a lot of things that have happened in my career that have caused me to do some soul searching. You got to know that was one of them. If you can barely put food on the table and people are taking your creative output and distributing it for free, that's got to put you somewhere in your head. Like that's when I started looking at this stuff from a non-consumer perspective, right? That's when I started looking at all this stuff from the perspective of not necessarily from the other side, right? Because I'm also a consumer, but taking a step back and looking at the big picture. And that's when I started realizing that when the money is taken out of the picture, there's no motivation. And that's coming from a Christian, right? And I do believe that God provides. So like no matter how bad the music industry gets, God is there to take care of me and whoever else that he's taking care of, right? I believe that. When we talk about music, there's this phobia talking about money, like somehow money dirties up the music or something. And that's not really how it is. Really what's happening when you say, I don't want to pay for the music, what you're saying is that music has very little value to me. That's how it is. It's funny. Last year, I don't know, the auditions are like in October or something. Last year, I had someone asking for the music for free again in the last week of September. Huh? So what does that tell you about how much they value, right? The music is released in May. How much does it tell you about how much they value any of this stuff? And yes, I understand that there can be reasons why this happened. Maybe they went out of town, whatever, I understand that. But take a step back and look at the big picture. It's an issue of value. There's music under contract today that cannot be bought. Did you know that as a creator of music, you have the say over what happens with your music? Let's say you write a jazz etude. You have a say about what happens to that. And there are compositions that the orchestras, and there's other stuff too besides orchestra, but that's where I know it from. Um, in when I was still playing in orchestras, there's often times where the music that we perform is rented. It's rented. You can't even own it because the people who own the copyrights to that music say, no, you're not allowed to own it. You can only rent it. As a composer, you have control over it's called intellectual property. You have control over that. And if you don't want anyone to have it, you get to say that. Now, the most convenient thing is to be part of the system. And that's the rental stuff. You're not part of the system. You're saying, I don't want to be part of the system. I want people to pay me individually for each time they play my music. The easier way is to be part of the system so that when people play your music, it gets picked up by Harry Fox or whoever is, and then BMI I'm a member of BMI, but you have ASCAP and other agencies like that collect money for you every time the piece is performed. And then you have mechanical royalties, like for when the stuff is copied, and that's all stuff based on your ownership. I think a lot of people, when they ask for the free music, they don't understand exactly what's at play there. I don't think they understand exactly what the cost is. And that's why I told you about the story from 1990. Let me tell you this. It never stopped. It never stopped happening. Even to this day, people are still distributing my music without my permission for free. Even to this day. And I'm not wealthy. I'm not nearly as bad off as I was in 1990. But the money matters. All these people that want to say that the money doesn't matter, that if it matters, then the music isn't sincere. The only way I could be where I am today is because during all those years, I got paid for what I was doing. If it hadn't been for all the money I made in music, I would have had to get a job, and I'm not saying that's a terrible thing, but if it hadn't been for making money, I would have had to get a job. That means none of my books would exist. That means my skill as a trumpet player would be about a third of what it is today. That means the compositions that I've written, I wake up, first thing I do every morning is compose for between 15 minutes and an hour. I compose music first thing in the morning. If I had a job, that wouldn't happen. Without the income, the material is not generated.